Housing, Community, and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. We have a quorum. We have Councilmember Reyes present, Councilmember Herb Weston present, and myself as chair. With that, we'll begin by reading items 1 and 2 into the agenda, into the record.
Sure, Michael Keck, CLA's office. Item number 1, motion Cardenas-Smith requesting that the LAPD, in conjunction with the Mayor's Office of Gang Reduction and Youth Development, report on the current level of coordination between law enforcement and gang intervention workers and related matters. This item was also referred from the Public Safety Committee to the Housing, Community, Economic Development Committee pursuant to Council action of September 9, 2011, Council File number 11-1529-S1. Item number 2, Board of Police Commissioners Report relative to LAPD's criteria used to report and classify crimes as gang-related, protocols for determining which types of incidents necessitate involving gang reduction service providers, and related trends, pursuant to motion Cardenas Parks Weezer and motion Parks Weezer, instructing the Chief Legislative Analyst to report with an evaluation of the Justice Policy Institute's report, Gang Wars - the failure of enforcement tactics and the need for effective public safety strategies.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions on these 2 items. Colleagues, do you have any questions on items 1 or 2? Okay, seeing none, then colleagues, what we'll do is we'll receive and file these 2 items. Thank you very much. We now move to items 9 and 10. Please read items 9 and 10 into the record.
Item number 9, CLA report as initiated by motions Perry Garcetti and Perry Garcetti Zine relative to oversight of the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. Item number 10, CLA report as initiated by motion Alarcon Weezer relative to including HACLA in the purview of Section 245 of the City Charter and the options and process needed to effectuate the change, including, if needed, amending the Charter, state or federal legislation, or the cooperative agreement with the City with HACLA.
Thank you. I apologize. Members, we'll go back to items 1 and 2. I did not open it up formally for public comment. So items 1 and 2, I do not have any cards before me on items 1 and 2 for public comment. Is anybody here for public comment on item number 1 or 2? Seeing no one come forward, having no cards before us on items 1 and 2, public comment is now closed on items 1 and 2. With that, the action of this committee is to receive and file these items. Okay, thank you. We are now back on items 9 and 10. They have been read into the record. Can I have the CLA staff come forward? Good morning. Your name for the record, please?
Felipe Chavez with the CLA's office.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. This item was in this committee before, but apparently there was some confusion as to what action was taken by this committee. Can you bring us up to speed as to what action seemed to be recorded for the record?
This item was heard on May 30th, 2012, and our report was basically in response to several motions requesting our office to provide information regarding different options for the council to have more oversight of HACLA. Our recommendation at the time was basically to establish a process to amend the agreement between HACLA and the city to establish a reporting process. There were several amendments proposed to our recommendation by Councilmember Alarcon and Perry. And let me just briefly read to you what the recommendation was and then the amendments as well. The recommendation was basically to amend the HACLA cooperation agreement with the following protocols and submit it to the council for final approval within 30 days back then. Basically, the process was to forward to each council member all Board of Commissioners posted agendas, remove from HACLA agendas any items requested by council for review. Upon the council member request, submit for council review any items scheduled on any HACLA agendas and be available to present to council and its committees. The 2 amendments that were made at the table were amend the CLA recommendation number 1 to include a time frame of 30 days to return items back to HACLA, and also an instruction for the city attorney and the CLA to work together to develop language that would address any potential negative impact to time-sensitive items.
Okay. Now, and what was the vote on what was the action and the vote count on that?
There were three members present at the time. There were two council members who voted for those two amendments, and the chair did not make a recommendation.
Okay. So for the record, there were three members present. It takes three members to make a majority of this committee, and only two members voted for those changes that were before us at the time. So we also have Mr. Guthrie here. You want to come forward in case my colleagues have any questions? Colleagues, do you have any questions at this time? Okay. Thank you very much. So what I would like to move is that we change our previous action or make the following action and recommend that the City Council, recommend from the City Council that Cao report to HCD Committee on a quarterly basis and also to come to the committee on an ad hoc basis as requested by this committee. And in particular, when it comes to issues that are identified for discussion by this body. In addition to that, it is always the authority, I just want to remind everybody that it's always the authority of the City Council to bring up items and make stricter requirements if we choose to do so in the future. So with that, that is the motion that I make at this time. All those in favor? Aye? Okay. I think I heard Wesson back there behind the wall. Okay. So 3-0 vote. Okay. Thank you very much. He is present. That is an aye vote. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll read into the record item number 4.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Richard Williams, City Clerk's Office. I just want to be clear. We're moving the recommendations in the CLA report with the two amendments that were just made?
No, we are not taking the recommendations in the report, and we're only moving the motion that was made.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item 5.
24 or 5?
I'm sorry, 4.
4.
I'm looking at the wrong page. Item 4, please.
Item number 4, communication from the mayor and CAO to report relative to authorization to execute a third amendment to contract number 11646 with the Advancement Project for a term beginning January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2013 in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for the implementation of Los Angeles Intervention Training Academy.
Okay, thank you very much. We're on item number 4, members. I'll go to public comment first. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 4? I do not see any public comment cards before me on item number 4. So with that, item number 4, public comment is now closed. Any questions, members, on item 4?
No.
Okay. With that, what we'll do is approve the CAO report. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me go back to, let's finish this item first. So that item is approved on a 3-0 vote. The CAO report's been approved. Let's go back to items 9 and 10. I apologize. I didn't formally open up public comment on item numbers 9 and 10. I did not have any public comment cards before me. Is there anybody here for public comment on items 9 and 10? Seeing no one come forward and no public comment cards before me on items 9 and 10, public comment on items 9 and 10 has been open and is now closed. Thank you, and we will sustain the vote on items 9 and 10. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, do you also want to receive and file the CLA report that's on file for number 9 and 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. A question on item 4 from Councilmember Reyes.
Is anyone here regarding this item?
As far as staff?
Yeah.
Any of the staff here can speak on item number 4? We'll have Guillermo with the mayor's office.
Good morning, Guillermo.
Good morning, sir.
When we're looking at all the different entities that are now under the grid program, I'm trying to understand the fit. Does this pertain to the whole umbrella, or is this going to be used in specific areas or specific programs? Just share a little bit of light, because the report doesn't really get to that
Correct.
point.
This has been the platform for two things, both training gang intervention workers, and I think probably more important than the training, this platform has served for us to effectively monitor intervention workers in a way that it's not done exclusively through a report. So it trains all of the intervention workers throughout the city, but equally as important is been training intervention workers to become trainers, and some of these workers have been able to now provide technical assistance to other cities like Memphis, Sacramento. So it provides, we've been really building a career path in training for gang intervention workers through the academy. This impacts all gang intervention workers through the city. And so yes, it impacts the entire city.
Okay, so the individuals that we know that go into a hot area,
Correct,
there's a rumor there's going to be a shooting, or there's been a shooting, or right after the shooting.
correct,
Person goes in without a gun, without a badge, engages the intensity of the moment.
correct.
And so we are now, because on instinct, they've been doing this for years.
Excuse me, sir. I didn't-
On instinct, they've been doing this for years.
They've been doing this for years.
We've never done anything for them until recently.
Correct,
So Councilman Cardenas was able to focus on
correct,
a staff in the mayor's office, yourself,
correct.
developing the support system to create these new skill sets.
Correct.
So we're dealing with reading, writing, reports, analysis. I mean, I just want to understand
Yeah.
what we're doing.
There are-
I think
there are-
people should hear what this means.
There are 5 components. One is called direct practice, which is all of the things they do in the field. The other one is concrete tasks like administrative, reading contracts, etc. There's a section called public policy, because we're finding that, or we have found in the past, that if intervention workers don't understand the procurement process, for example, or the nature of contracts, this could spark disagreements on the ground. And then there's a huge component called personal development. Most intervention workers, it's a very difficult job. They have to walk a line between law enforcement, the community. So we've placed a lot of emphasis on their personal development, managing stress, how they talk to other agencies, all of
Trust
that.
factor. Yeah.
So, and then the one component that has just gotten stronger is figuring out how to apply theory to what they do. In my opinion, the biggest accomplishment of the Academy have been 2 things. They've developed a method, which has been developed by intervention workers, to teach other intervention workers. And they've served the city as a oversight platform, because if an intervention worker is having trouble at home, for example, and previously we wouldn't know that. When we see them at the Academy consistently, their peers can then start to notice, John Doe looks like he's slipping back or whatever. So to some degree, we've been very, very pleasantly surprised of that besides the curriculum, this has served the city as a good oversight platform.
One of my concerns is that those of us who've been here 10, 12 years have been focused on this. You have a whole new group of council members,
Correct.
everyone with a different orientation, different personality, different perspective on life. When it comes down to gang intervention, there are many constants that have been there for decades, and how we deal with this crisis. I would hope that we find the right vehicle to introduce what you're doing, given that the current administration
Correct.
is going to be in 7 months, June of
Correct.
2013.
Correct.
So how does this get institutionalized in the city, or is this based on a funding by funding process?
I think a little bit of both, sir. I think that with the new council members coming in, I think our office has to become more active in briefing those new council members. I think the last 5 years, we now have data to brief them with, and we're way more organized than we were before. And of course, our goal is to institutionalize all of the violence reduction strategies that the city has implemented that now are becoming models that are being emulated not just throughout the city, but actually in other countries as well. So we need to institutionalize this.
If time permits, I want to make sure that in my last we parallel each other in terms of duration here. If we could find the vehicle that allows us to formalize it, and not leave it to chance, I don't know when we'll find time. We're both very, very busy,
Okay.
but
No,
I think
we'll make
that's
the
a pivotal
time.
point, I
We'll
think.
make the time, and
But I do want to congratulate the councilman, the chair, for getting to this place in which we are now formally looking at this type of support system that is very, very significant in
I think
dealing
it
with the
has been.
pressures.
I think it has been. And, there have been many people in council that have been very supportive and, to some degree, holding us to task. And I think we've been able to respond to that.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Reyes. And there's no question that there's better documentation, there's better dialogue, and there's a lot more understanding at every level as to what intervention is and what the value is. And we have more interventionists who are more uniform in their understanding
Correct.
of the various techniques and the various responsibilities that they have, because it is a very dangerous job to be a gang interventionist.
And as a last comment, more women doing gang intervention, which is the next step of development, that we intentionally need to develop more women intervention workers because of the access that they have that is different than for the guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you, members. Okay, so we took action on number 4. We've now been joined by Councilmember Perry. What I'm going to do is we're going to go to item number 7, and Ms. Perry, after that, has requested to go back to items 9 and 10.
Yes.
So we'll go to item 7, and then we'll go back to items 9 and 10 and reopen items 9 and 10. Item 7, please.
Item number 7, LHD report in response to a fiscal year 2012-13 adopted budget recommendation relative to auxiliary dwelling units, also known as granny flats, proposed legislation to protect renters and landlords of such units, and information about the practices of other cities. This item was also referred to the Planning and Land Use Committee. Planning and Land Use Management Committee, that is.
Members, there appears to be about 7 public comment cards on this item. Due to the nature of the number of items on the agenda, and we do have council at 10 o'clock, at this time, we'll move to 1-minute comment. We have approximately 6 items on item number, 6 public comment cards on item number 7. So we'll go to public comment first, and then we'll go to questions from the committee. Members, please come forward. We have Catalina Sanchez, Bill Huey, Victor Brett, Michael Millman. There should be 4 chairs, so there's room for all 4 of you. Go ahead, Mr. Huey, you sat down first.
All right, good morning, Councilman Perry. I'm Bill Huey, I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition. We're a civil rights organization for LA landlords who believe in equality under the law for both landlords and renters. I'm against this because a lot of times a landlord will buy a building that's already in this condition, and the LHD comes down on them like they're the bad guy. I've known landlords have gone and bought buildings in REAP with the intention of cleaning them up, and 1 week after the deed changes hands, a task force comes in, and the landlord gets prosecuted criminally. Also, I think it would be morally correct to give us more than a 1 or 2 day notice, because I have a lot of landlords who maybe they own a 6-unit building. 60% of the landlords in LA own 10 units or less. So that the apartment building is not their main income, because they can't make a living off of that. So what they do is they have a day job, whether they're a doctor, a dentist, and they would come down and speak, but they can't do it on 2 days' notice. It's impossible. It'd be very wonderful if this committee and or the city council, when they're dealing with a housing issue, if they could give us a 1 week notice. I'll give you my email. You give me I can put it out to 2,400 landlords in LA. And plus, I'm friendly with AGLA and the AOA, and they'll resend it out to everybody. It's only fair that people be properly informed. I don't see the timer.
Yeah, it's broken.
Okay, I'll take a minute there. That's
Thank you.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Huey. Thank you for understanding the clock is not working right. Okay, we'll start to my left. You have a minute, please. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here to speak for Catalina. She's 73 years old. She lives in Boyle Heights. And our association, the Boyle Heights Stakeholders Association, had to come out because she's being attacked by the LA Housing Department, and we went out there to defend her. She has one of the best properties on Pleasant Avenue, and this is an outrage of what's going on, because she happens to have one of those particular units, which is used as a warehouse. and she's owned the property for a long time. And I'm going to tell you something, we cannot get loans in Boyle Heights because we are considered a community with non-conforming. And I had a hard time getting a loan in our community, in my building in Boyle Heights. This has got to stop because what we're trying to do is people to comply. Now, back in 2004 and in 2006, the LA Housing Department wanted to come after several properties in Boyle Heights, which were on Malabar, Cincinnati, and the other street. But let me tell you something. I am part of very important coalitions. We are 72,000 apartment owners. And we will determine who will be the mayor, and we will determine many things that are going to start happening in this city because we get tired of the corruption, and we have coalitions going on with our association of Bill Huey, and we have 50 to 100 people showing up right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next.
I am Catalina, and I can hardly hear, but that's why I had this lady speak for me, and with the help of Mr.
Okay.
Huey.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. All right. Victor?
Yes, I'm Vic Barrett, and while I don't have any granny flats, there's a housing shortage, as I understand, in Los Angeles, particularly for affordable housing. And when you have people who invest in property to provide housing, and unfortunately with the granny flats, there are some things that the city says are wrong. The city should help as far as getting involved with helping solve the problems rather than just saying you've got to get these tenants out of there. And then when you have to evict the tenants, there's this relocation assistance, which can bankrupt somebody. I mean, $18,000, whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous to have to pay that kind of money when you're trying to provide housing for people. And so that's my comment.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes. Good morning, and briefly, let's roll this over at least 60 to 90 days. AGLA, the tenant activists, BEDSETIC, LA CAN, and LAHD have a tentative agreement to deal with the 75,000 or more bootlegged, non-conforming units to work on an amnesty program. This report is extremely well written. I give it an A+ for style. I give it a failure for incomplete as to substance. Beautifully written. It is the greatest con job I've seen in years. We need to deal with the elephant in the room, which is the illegal units. Talking about homes in Northridge where you can build an auxiliary unit because there's a state law is part of the con. Be very careful. We know that there are these units out there. Let's deal with it in 90 days. Let's have AGLA come back with a program that'll work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have Yolanda Gonzalez. So you spoke on behalf of Catalina before?
I did.
Okay. You were her interpreter. Because we don't let people speak on behalf of someone else unless they're an interpreter. So you were her interpreter, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So you get another minute.
Thank
And
you.
then after that, we have William Rodriguez Morrison. Go ahead. You can begin, Yolanda.
Yes, going back to what I was saying, I was just sent by the LA Housing Department fees that they want from 204, 202, for what reason? And I've taken them to 2 council representations, so in order to find out why am I going back to fees to 204 and 206. Rosendahl is looking into it, because if I have certificates of occupancy already, then why in hell am I going to be charged for fees? And if you want to sneak these under us, we've got lawyers, and we're going to take it to the grand jury, which we already have in place. This is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen to my people, because I will throw the NAFTA treaty at the city council, just like I did in 204 and 206, and I will seek the representation of the Mexican consulate to help our people be ahead of all of you. We need help. Our buildings are getting old. We need to update, and we don't want anybody coming in. We have people losing their buildings, even in your district, Ms. Jan Perry, and we're helping them. That's what I want to get.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name's William Rodriguez Morrison. I'm also an apartment owner and property manager. Unfortunately, you never make laws to protect the landlord. I've had several tenants that have destroyed my building before, that made complaints against my building before, and of course, destroyed it. I had one tenant at one time saying that there was a hole in the roof, on top of the roof, to where they could see the sun. Unfortunately, when the inspectors came out, there was no hole. They destroyed my apartment. The city took my rent at one portion at one time. I never got repaid, and I had to fix that whole building once again. Actually, it's a shame when somebody paints my walls black and I have to take off all the drywall and re-repair it. You have nothing fair for landlords, only protecting tenants, and this needs to change. And that's one reason I am running for a city office at this present time. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment cards on this item. Public comment on this item is now closed. Any questions, members, on the report? Barry?
Is there any reason why we can't give them a little more time to refine this and reach some consensus? Or can we hear from the staff about what's been done?
Anybody here from the Housing Department to comment on the report and let us know what additional information you could afford this committee should we give you more time to fortify your report?
Good morning, Roberto Aldapi, Assistant General Manager for the Housing Department. Mr. Millman is correct. Pursuant to your office instructions, we develop a landlord-tenant group that have been meeting regularly. This included the AGLA, California Apartment Association, my good friend Malcolm Bennett from the Minorities Apartment Association, over several issues regarding the rent study. One of the issues that came out of this group, this task force, if you will, is to develop and build trust and understanding amongst landlords and tenants. And I think we have done an effective job toward that because we're meeting and we're being civil with each other. The first meeting was at Harold Greenberg's house in his office, and we met. All of the advocacy groups were present. One of the issues that the Apartment Association wanted to discuss was what we call the second non-conforming units. Council refers to as the granny flats. We are in the process of discussing that issue with them. Of course, as you know, this was an instruction during the budget hearing this year for the department to report back on the feasibility of granny flats and its effect on tenants, and so therefore our report was filed with you. We are not opposed to Council Members Perry's suggestion or recommendation to continue meeting with the Apartment Association groups to enhance this proposal even further, if the Council so short direct us to do so.
Ms. Barry, are there particular matters that you would like the report to include?
Well, yeah, because this reminds me of, I guess the analogy would be the debate we went through on SB 1818, and the council had to initiate an implementing ordinance for those on-the-ground issues that weren't addressed in the broader policy. And I think one of the concerns that I would have is on, if you end up legalizing many of these granny flats and making them into housing, does the city have the capacity to regulate the implementation, the design, the configuration? Obviously, they have to satisfy building code requirements, and to protect the neighborhoods in which they're situated. And of course, many of them they were built without permits. So as we bring them out of the shadows into the light, that we do so without being detrimental to the surrounding, especially single-family or multifamily, but to do it in such a way that is of benefit to the community, of benefit to the property owner, and improves the safety of the unit for the tenant. I mean, representing South LA, I can't tell you how many illegal units I've seen that are actually, dangerous. I'd love to see that corrected. So I guess what I'm looking for is a little more conversation or debate or vetting from the group itself on what is the practical application and what's the vehicle through which to do that. I don't know that it would take all that long to do it, since we've done this exercise a number of times. And again, SB 1818 is an example of how things don't necessarily play out the way you expect them out in the field. You go from the theoretical to practical application. So I suppose I would ask the group or the department if they could go one more round and maybe come back in 45 days. I don't know how that works with the holiday schedule and all that, and give us some more specific language on the implementation portion of what they seek to do here.
Okay. Well, 45 days would put us toward the end of January. So would that be enough time to meet with the working group and get some more feedback from them and incorporate perhaps some practical recommendations as to how we could apply bringing these units into code, and also some recommendations on what the city of Los Angeles can do based on the formula that we already seem to have wrapped around our housing elements within the city? Is 45 days long enough, or do
I
you
would
need 60?
venture to say that we extended it a little bit longer. It's always been a challenge to try to get 7 to 8 type of groups between landlords and tenants to meet.
So
we
60
don't have-
days brings us to the first couple of weeks of February.
I would say mid-February. February, we probably
Call
have
it
a meeting.
Valentine's Day report.
We can- We can have a meeting in January and then report back.
By February 14th. Yes, Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, I think one of the, this notion of enforceability is based on how the zoning language, zoning code, planning principles are applied, and given this challenge and following along the lines of Councilman Perry's observation, we have the planning department, are they here on this matter? We find ourselves in a position where we're told, well, we implement the laws we have, policies you, council, creates. So when you look at enforcement, which is what building safety's main function is, given this dialogue, could planning participate in this discussion to make sure that whatever transpires, whatever is being suggested, that it also reflects those directives and principles or objectives in the zoning code? Is that something that is needed, or do you feel we have enough flexibility in the zoning language to allow for these kinds of recommendations?
We'd certainly be happy to work.
Introduce yourself.
Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. We'd certainly be happy to work with this task force. We've tried for a number of years to get an ordinance adopted that would basically fine-tune what the state allows us to use for these secondary dwelling units. It hasn't been able to move forward, so we do rely solely on state law, and that is we have a policy that allows these units to be built. I don't know if that addresses your concern, but we would be happy to work.
I can ask you, I know Domingo and I have been, we've all been through a whole series of experiences the past 12 years in my district in particular, and cases throughout the city when it comes to implementation and enforcement. What is going to change, or what do we introduce that's new or different, given, when I started I had hair, a lot of you guys had darker hair. Things, we went through all these stresses. So what's going to change? What can we do that's realistic? Because I hate to create false hopes.
I think probably the biggest change will be for us to actually review.
Your name again for the record?
I'm sorry, I'm Domingo Salceda, Director of the Code Enforcement for the Housing Department. And one of the things that we, as inspectors in the Code Enforcement Division, see every time we go out there are, in many cases, some very well units that look like they've been converted in a very good manner. They're in a good quality and good construction. However, even in some of those cases where we've actually asked the contractor to expose some of the conditions behind the walls, we find conditions that could pose a threat to the tenants. So one of the things that we would like to really see is to make sure that these buildings are brought into compliance through the, as Councilmember Perry mentioned, through the inspection and permitting process that Building and Safety has established and in place right now before the inspectors at the Housing Department actually go out there and take a look at these units.
Can you repeat that one more time? I didn't quite catch that.
have the building department actually go out there and expose the conditions that are behind these walls through the permit process, and take a look at the construction that was done behind these walls that have been covered in these units.
But the discretion lies in how that particular inspector sees that specific scenario. So you could up a corner and speak to how the joists are connected or how the electrical is laid out. You can cut out a corner versus a whole wall.
Yeah.
So there is that discretion that still might not bode well for the property owner.
I think in the past, what we've done is we've asked the owner or the contractor to expose certain sections that we consider would expose possible conditions, such as electrical connections, maybe plumbing and venting conditions behind the wall, so that we could take a look at. I think you get a sample, you can pretty much see what the remainder of the construction
That's the
process.
subjectivity that folks are responding to.
That's correct.
It's on the case-by-case basis. We can put it in writing, but when the rubber hits the road on that day of that inspection,
It comes out.
pending the nature of that dialogue, the results, whether upset the property owner or the inspector gets more upset. Then he comes back even with a more
Vigorous.
A bigger list.
right. I mean, that's the human factor here.
That's correct. And I think that, once the inspectors are trained with the concept that they're going to be looking at the safety issues primarily, I think we could focus on that area.
I just hope that this creates some kind of traction that sees a real difference. And that's why I'm asking planning to be part of this discussion, because sometimes we fall back on, well, that's what the letter of the policy, the letter of the law and the policy, and then we end up in this big circle. And I'm just trying to get ourselves out of that loop. So, Mr. Rothman, can we work to that end and introduce?
Certainly. I mean, we do have, there are guidelines to these units, and I know that before they even get to the point where they review the construction, there are, requirements that they must meet the setbacks, and I know a lot of these units don't meet setback requirements, and the distance between, if it's a separate unit, the distance between the primary unit and the secondary unit, there's additional parking required, so it's more than just the construction costs and the construction quality, but it's also the zoning regulations that they must abide by.
I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I think we get to this point and we kind of gloss over it, and just thought it was important to drill down a little bit.
Perfect example of how complicated it is, and fortunately and unfortunately, it does come down to a case-by-case basis. So with that, what we'll do is have you, all the departments that put into this report, continue to dialogue also with the working group and bring a report back no later than February 14th. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that'll be our Valentine's report. Okay, thank you very much. That's item number 7, and we did satisfy the public comment on item number 7 as well. At this time, Ms. Perry is present and would like us to come back to items 9 and 10, which we took together.
Yeah.
We took action on items 9 and 10, and it was a 3-0 vote. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, do I need to make a motion to reconsider 9 and 10?
Okay, Ms. Perry has would like to reconsider items 9 and 10. Item 9 and 10 is now before us.
Okay, thank you. I wanted my vote to be cast to approve the Chief Legislative Analyst's report, and just for the record, I want to be recorded as a no vote on the Cardenas amending motion. I think it's really important that we have a systematic approach to the HACLA oversight, and I think the recommendations in the Chief Legislative Analyst's report achieve that end, and I can go into more detail, but that's enough for now. I just want to be recorded that way.
Okay.
Okay.
So the actions of this committee are a 3-1 vote on my motion earlier and a minority report supported by Ms. Perry on the recommendations that were in the original report, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So that concludes our actions on items 9 and 10. We'll now go to item number 5.
Item number 5, continued from November 14, 2012. Department of City Planning Report in response to fiscal year 2012-13 adopted budget recommendation and motion Perry Parks. Parks Perry, relative to what federal funding such as home, HOPWA, and CDBG are being jeopardized if the city is not in compliance regarding the housing element.
Okay. We're on item number 5. Are there any public comment cards on item number 5? We haven't received any public comment cards on item number 5. Is anybody here for item number 5? As public comment is now open on item number 5. Seeing no public comment cards and no one come forward on item number 5 on public comment. Public comment on item number 5 is now closed. Do we have any questions from the committee members on item number 5? Ms. Reyes?
Yeah,
Planning Department?
yeah. When we look at this item and the verbiage are being jeopardized if the city is not in compliance regarding the housing element, we have current policies that are in discussion. They're not agendized right now. But in the context of the bigger housing discussion, as move forward with issues of providing services within residential zones, number of units, et cetera. Have we folded in that current discussion to this report?
Good morning, council members. Matt Kolesny, Planning Department. I am the project manager on the housing element update we're working on currently.
This is for the Planning Department.
Planning Department.
Okay. I think I put you at a disadvantage. I apologize. I'm being very vague on purpose because I don't want to violate agenda, but the issue here is we are trying to deal with services for our community. We are trying to find that place to address. The housing director, would you mind coming up? Because this is a very critical phase that we're in, and there is a very lively discussion in the city now about how we provide services to keep people from being homeless and where are they situated. And do they fit in residential or don't they? And so if we're not going to violate the Fair Housing Act, how are we folding in that discussion into this particular action?
Mr. Reyes,
Yeah.
Mercedes Marquez, I'm here both as the deputy mayor and as the housing director. Thank you for the discussion. In fact, this is the first time that we have the planning department, the housing department, community development, the housing authority, and LASA as all working together on these issues that you raise as it relates to the consolidated plan, the 5-year plan being due in February to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We are in fact working together to ensure that for the first time we have some parity and transparency between the consolidated plan and the housing element. Since the last time either a housing element or a consolidated plan were filed with the state government and then the federal government, HUD has significantly changed the requirements, the data, the format in which a consolidated plan is filed. It's more detailed, mapping and data are more precise. We'll be held accountable for outcomes for the first time in the, almost 40 years of the consolidated plan. And we have already reached out to the state. We've already talked to Sacramento, myself, about how it is that we're going to bridge the timing of the consolidated plan, which is due in February, and the housing element, which would be due now. In fact, we have requested and received an extension so that now, for the first time in our history, the consolidated plan and the housing element will speak to one another. So what is filed with the state will actually reflect what it is that the city adopts as part of the consolidated plan. In fact, the folks in Sacramento thought it was a great idea, right? And what we are doing is working now to submit anything that we can that is done that does not require that in advance so that they can review. But in the end, both the federal government and the state will receive a housing element, and a consolidated plan that has been adopted by the City Council.
Now, do these plans allow enough flexibility so that the priorities of each council member could be folded into how they view priorities for their respective districts?
Yes, because the data that comes forward from HUD is citywide, right? And so the mapping that we're engaged in, you will all receive, and you will see what the data shows about your respective council districts. Given how much help is needed in the city, there is more than ample room for the elected official to target. In fact, you know that we're making the rounds with each to gain from each elected representative what their priorities are, so that we know now and can take them into account when we make our proposal, which is then open for you all to review. But we feel that if we talk first, the chance at getting a more integrated and better leverage plan is better than if we don't.
Okay. And just from the planning department, the timing issue, as stated by our housing director, as we continue with this collaboration, are we on schedule from the planning department's point of view in terms of what you have to get done?
Yes, we believe we are on schedule to meet the deadline. The deadline for the housing element is October 15th, I believe, 2013. We made good progress up to this point. We've got a task force of housing experts and advocates put together. We've pretty much finished that first phase of outreach with developers, advocates, housing experts to get their feedback. We're sort of putting together our initial thoughts into the document, and we'll be before you.
Right. And well, I'll just be very blunt about it. I do know that when it comes to how a council member wants to move his resources or her resources in relation to their priorities and represent their community, that in the budget process, we do the final approval of the budget. So it would behoove us to make sure that we understand how these decisions are being framed within the context of state and federal law.
Well, and in the end, it'll all be framed by how much money we don't have.
Right. But you also have priorities of how much you've invested in to leverage.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things for the first time we're going to make clear what the leverage opportunities are.
Great.
The difficult thing is that we make decisions without everyone having the opportunity to make a decision about how important is that leverage to you or not, right? And now for the first time you'll have it before you to make whatever decisions you all deem the best ones for yourselves, but with real information.
I understand, and I think when it comes down to how staff engages, there's one approach that says, this is what we have in front of us, is the landscape, this is what we know could happen, versus this is what's best for you, this is what we're going to do. And those are the two approaches.
Nobody has that. Only you have the right to make those
Right.
decisions. So,
Right.
I mean, from my point of view, I think the difference is that the big change that HUD is now requiring us to engage in is that we're receiving data from them, and they expect us to respond as to what we're doing with the data. So that's the big difference, right? That before we received data, we made our decisions, and there was no requirement or expectation that we would actually respond to what the data says to the federal government. And now the federal government requires us to respond and to keep track of outcomes. So does that limit what was the absolute discretion? Absolutely, because the federal government is not requiring.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll note and file the planning report. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to item number 6.
Item number 6, continued from ACD August 1st, 2012, LHD reports relative to pursuing liens against delinquent properties and the current efforts made by LHD to collect fines and penalties, including information about practices of other cities. This is pursuant to adoption of the mayor's 2012-13 budget on May 21st, 2012.
Thank you very much. If the housing department could come forward, and then we'll go to public comment after that.
Good morning, Roya Bobazadeh, Housing Department.
Good morning. Back in August, the discussion mainly was surrounded around the authority and the ability for the department to put liens. But it's my understanding that the Housing Department looks forward to adopting a different way of filing liens than what was discussed in August.
Correct. The Housing Department
Hold
was
on one second.
instructed.
For those of you who filled out cards on number 6, I have a feeling what one of the main things that you have come to this committee and speak your opinion, et cetera, and it's greatly appreciated. So please listen to what the Housing Department's saying right now, because I think something has changed in what they would like to do and how they would like to handle liens. Go ahead.
Housing Department was instructed by Budget Committee to assess possibility of applying lien to the delinquent accounts to raise the revenue. To do so, we did a survey of 7 departments in the city and a survey of 17 other cities to analyze their lien programs. And based on the number of bills that we have, which is extensive, we issue over 350,000 bills and notices each year. And last year we collected over $56 million. The extent of the work that we have and possibility that a property can become delinquent several times for different reasons based on our fees, we deem that applying lien to our programs are not efficient way to do the collection activities. Therefore, we are proposing an alternative way. Current process is that after all the efforts we do and notifications that we put in place to make our revenue, if the accounts are delinquent, we follow the procedure that instructed in the citywide guideline and forward the accounts to collection agencies, to one collection agency, and then if it's not collected, we retrieve it, send it to the second collection agency. What we are proposing is to, instead of sending our accounts to collection agencies, we provide property owners with another due process to be heard after a thorough review of the accounts when we identify their liability, to have a hearing in the council if they have any contest of the bills. And after that, if we are authorized to go further for enforcing our fees, we are forwarding the accounts, delinquent accounts, to county assessors to be added to the property bill. That is not a lien, it's just another enforcement by issuing bills through property bill. That is not going to result in a lien, but we do expect to see increase in revenue. Current process, historically, collection agencies are collecting 15%. We expect that to be raised to about 75% by adding our bills to county assessors' bills.
Okay. So first, there's a hearing process.
Correct.
And then in addition to that, we would be working with the county when it comes to the assessment process on properties through the county.
Correct. We forward our accounts to county assessors, and they, once a year, they add these bills to their bills. Still, even in that level, if there is any contest that come at the latest stage after all the possibilities and opportunities that we provide to property owners, we still have opportunity to work with county and retrieve our accounts.
Okay. So you can still remove it even after you've initiated that action?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the members before we go to public comment? Yeah, Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, just in terms of the ambiguity of title, who owns the property, given the debacle of foreclosure, question, who owns the portfolio, you got all this ambiguity. How does that factor into the assessment process?
We do have extensive process in place. We issue the bill, and the property owners have, for majority of our bills, which is SCIP and rent registration, that over 83% of our revenue comes from these two revenue fees. We provide constituents with 60 days to make their payments or contest the bill. If they don't pay the bills at that time, another bill is issued, a delinquent bill. And then after that, they have another 30 days to contest, and if they fail to do so and fail to pay, we issue final notification and provide them with additional 10 days. At each stage of this bill 3 level, we do analysis of the ownership. We verify who is the liable person for that service. And if the ownership has changed, the new owner is not billed for the services that the old owner received.
In a very rough number, how many cases do you have where you don't know who the property owner is because change in property title or a question of who has the title? Is there a big number? Is that a small number?
Well, we have done extensive work to improving that, and we are purchasing. We used to utilize county recorders data, which was a little bit behind, and now we are purchasing private data that is very up to date.
But of all the liens that you have, is it 10%, 20%, 5%?
No, overall, all of our bills, delinquencies are 10%, and the complaints that we receive is less than 1%. And when we review these complaints, more than half of them, maybe two-thirds of them are not substantiated. So the error level is very low. And because of the long process and different level of review, if there is a contest, we suspend the account, administratively review the issue, and then if it's substantiated, we reverse the bill. If it's not substantiated, we issue a correspondence informing property owner that they have to pay because they are liable for that fee. And after that, we also give them another 10 days to make the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to public comment now on item number 6. Again, we'll go to 1 minute. We do have council in 15 minutes, and we have about a dozen to 15 cards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So first, we'll bring up 4 people at a time. There are 4 seats and 4 microphones. Frank Romero, Victor Varick, Michael Millman, and William Rodriguez Morrison. Start to my left.
Yes, Michael Millman. Just briefly, the paperwork that was submitted here is again an excellent example of well-drafted but nonsense. Everything in the paperwork that you see was contradicted by the lady that spoke. This is a textbook example that you can take right to law school and show those students about the failure of a municipality to extend due process. Those bills go out without explanation. You challenge them. They ignore you. The rate of pay goes up 500%. It's usurious. Even if I got a judgment next door, my rate of interest would only be 10%. Read their report. San Francisco and San Diego use judicial officers completely independent to make the determination. This is a lawsuit waiting in the making. It's a stealing. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Victor.
Morning. There are a few aspects as far as before you even get to the part where they're going after unpaid fines and penalties. One is the excessive or usurious rate as far as on late payment for the SCEP and for the rent registration, 150 or 200%. Also, on the inspections, when you have tenants who do damage to the property, and that's not always the case, but that's a very normal part of the problem. They need to be cited rather than the owner. Another part of it has to do with properties age. As a properties age, things go wrong, and some things take a lot longer to get fixed. And if it's a structural matter, very difficult problems, the owner has to be able to get financing, and a lot of owners can't get financing, and then they get in trouble and got reaped because of that problem.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. I'm sure that everybody knows about the corruption of the housing department that has been exposed in KCET public television, how they use public funds to go to resorts, Las Vegas, and misuse them. And then we're getting tired of being extortion by this public housing department that is supposed to help the people.
I think you're referring to HACLA, but go ahead.
Pardon me?
I think you're referring to HACLA, but go ahead.
Yeah, the corruption, it has been open to the public, that every time they go after the landlords and try to exploit us more and more, raising, when I raise $3, $4 to my tenants, they think I'm the one who wants to keep the money, and it's not. I'm not raising the $4. It's the housing department. And I give them the phone number, but nobody calls them because they're Latins. They poor people. $4 is a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you once again, this is William Morrison. Actually, the one thing is, they never send these notices out on a timely manner. They wait till the last minute, so this way it can go into collections. They've done this before to my mom and me, so we made sure we paid it. Now, the one thing I want to point out, we always make sure our properties are up 100% completed, clean, everything. When we have tenants ruining it, that's very bad, and I hate getting these fines. Now, of course, when you have a problem in your district, and I'm not going to mention any district names, but when you have a problem with the city that's not complying towards homeowners, property owners, and not fixing the problem, lighting problems, of course, you have people in your alleys, which are in council districts. Two of the members are sitting up there, so they know what I'm talking about. So should we fine you because you're not complying towards the needs of our city and to our homeowners and apartment owners? Thank you.
Thank you. Evelyn Garcia, Catalina Sanchez, and I guess Yolanda Gonzalez, you're going to speak on your behalf and interpret for Catalina? Okay. And then Bill Huey. Okay. Evelyn?
Yes, I oppose to this proposition just because I think it's unfair and unmorally, especially for the mom and pop shops who are landlords. I think it's unfair that we're placing REAP because a unit is illegal. I think that's wrong. I mean, we've been in REAP for the past 5 years and trying to get out of it, and we're getting fines for it on a monthly, constantly, and yet I'm not sure why the LHD administers the units incorrectly. I think it's immoral because most of us, we have subsidized buildings that we're providing housing for these people, and yet LHD wants to take, this away from us. I think it's incorrect, and I can speak for most of us that we're against this.
Thank you. So Yolanda and
Yes.
Catalina?
I go back
You're speaking for yourself or for Catalina?
for myself and for Catalina also. It's the same issue. We go back to 1998 on this issue. We have films that we have on blocked that we have going back with the LA Housing Department seeking help all the way back from 1998. This is just the one page that I have, but I have a whole file on it. You know what they're doing in Boyle Heights? They know the people that own property outright. They know that they have violations. Real estate brokers are going up to them, wanting to get them out of their properties, getting them into either a reverse mortgage or trying to move them out of there, offering them cash for their properties. I could not believe this was going on. And these people are ending up homeless because they can't afford to buy for what they have, and they get caught in taxes. This is what's going on. This is an outrage. And this is in conjunction with what's going on with real estate brokers and your LA Housing Department. We have already somebody who's going to come forward on this.
Okay. Gracias. Catalina, Yolanda habló para usted. ¿Quiere decir algo más?
Quiere decir lo que le está pasando con todo lo que le quiere.
Pues ya siguen, ya cuando yo pienso que ya está todo dicho, y me siguen mandando biles que por paperwork from the housing department.
She's retired. Her family lives there, And why are they picking on her when there's a building around the corner where the gutter is falling down? Never been. And I have a worker who lives over on Jane B's Wood, and I asked him, Efrain, when was the last time the LA Housing Department came to your building? Oh, señora, my owner, he takes care of it. We haven't been inspected in a long time, but they come after the ones that we have already who can afford to pay, and we still can't. I am sick and tired. I'd like to get up one day and say, I don't have any problems anymore. And it's cost us thousands and thousands of dollars, but I have the money, and I'll keep fighting.
Thank you. Gracias, Catalina. Thank you. Bill?
Yeah. Hi, the problem with the LA Housing Department, they have this corrupt culture. First of all, it starts with REAP. You go through a REAP hearing, and a person who's not a lawyer, not a judge, determines that they have the authority to take your rent away from you. This is a denial of due process. And then for those landlords, and most of them are small landlords, if they could put in REAP, they run to the bank to try to get a loan, and the housing department puts a lien on the property so you can't get a loan. This is organized crime. I mean, I've explained this to people who are not even in the housing business, and they go, you're making that up. No, you have a person, Helen Morales, she's not a lawyer, and boom, you're in REAP, and then you can't get a loan, so you lose your property, and then friends of certain people buy from the bank for pennies on the dollar. Al Capone would be jealous of this plan, if he were alive. Also, they're saying they're meeting with representative associations. I have 195 members, and I write for the AOA magazine. It goes out to 70,000 landlords. I like to attend some of these meetings. I've never been invited. I have a card here if anybody wants to invite me, So they're not making an effort to reach out to all the landlord groups. They're BSing you.
No, they're not.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Judah Vonger and S.D. Simmons. And before you begin, just the staff that's waiting on item number 3. Item number 3 is a longer dialogue, and as you can see, the clock is getting short. So item number 3 will be put over to the next meeting that convenes of this committee in January, okay? So item number 3, those of you who are staff on item number 3, we're gonna put item number 3 over in just a few minutes, so just so you don't have to wait any longer if you're here on item number 3. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Whatever comes from
Your
the house...
name again?
Jutta Vonger. Whatever comes from the housing department, you have to look at it already with suspicion because they are very corrupt. They are not for the landlords. Everything is for the tenant. Their fines, if somebody pays late or something happens, are exorbitant. I mean, in the private business, that couldn't happen. So now they want to put something on the tax bill. I don't think they have the right to put things on the tax bill. So this is not right. The housing department is corrupt, and it should be changed, and it's out of hand what they are doing.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, S.D. Simmons here. I think you've been told, I have 7 seconds to speak?
No, that's the remainder of her time, but they'll give you another minute. Go ahead.
Okay. I think you guys have been told numerous times how corrupt the LAHD is, numerous times over a number of years. It's been pointed out to you today, the culture of LAHD, that they just, out of hand vilify landlords, particularly small landlords. They, for whatever reason, feel like we're the golden goose and they can just bleed us dry. So I'm not going to go over all of that again. We've spoken about their usury rates and what have you. But I do think that Michael Millman, the first speaker, made an excellent point. And that is that if you continue to go along with these just unspeakably stupid ideas put forth by LAHD, then landlords really are going to stop coming down here to talk with you about it because we'll realize clearly we're not being heard, and we'll just go directly to our lawyers.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? I'm going to move that we note and file the LA Housing Department report. However, I'm going to request that the LA Housing Department, including with the CLA, CAO, and I think with the City Attorney's Office at least, perhaps some other departments as well, that they come back in 90 days with a report on, it was referred to that San Francisco uses a judicial review process instead of an in-house process like we do here, that they come back, San Diego, well, they're probably not the only ones, but what I'm referring to is the report come back with an analysis of our current system and what those kinds of systems afford, and then so that the City Council can decide whether or not we are going to continue with our in-house system, or perhaps at a later date figure out how we could move to a system that's of judicial review and not in-house. Okay, so that a report back in 90 days on that from those departments and the relevant staff within the city that need to be commenting on that report. Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we move to the last item that we're going to hear today. I announced earlier that item number 3 will be put over for the meeting in January. So we now have our last item on the agenda that we'll hear today is item number 8.
Councilman, should we hold a public hearing for those that are here on item number 3?
We do not have any public comment cards on item number 3. Is there anybody here who's item number 3 for public comment? We do not have any cards, no one coming forward to speak on item number 3. So public comment on item number 3 has been open and closed. Thank you very much for that reminder. And then item number 3 will be heard again in January when this committee reconvenes. Item number 8, please read into the record.
Item number 8, LHD report and joint CAO-CLA report relative to transition of the housing assets and functions of the former Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles to the LHD, approval of the housing asset transfer agreement between the City of LA and the CRA-LA, a designated local authority, and additional staffing and resources needed for the LHD to absorb and manage the housing assets and functions to be transferred to the LHD. A CLA-CA report is on file, and that report has also been referred to Personal Animal Welfare Committee.
Go to questions of committee first. Ms. Perry?
Just a quick question/comment. So just so you know, up front, I do support the CLA-CAO recommendations. I would like to know what happens if LAHD does not have enough existing funds to pay for the staffing costs as we make this transition. And I would like to know whether this will be addressed through the regular financial status reports and whether or not there is a commitment to fully fund LAHD as we go through this transition.
Yes, this is Madeline Rackley with the CAO. Thank you for your question. We fully support the recommendation in this report, and we will work with the Housing Department to find appropriate funding. The good news is, in an ongoing basis, the Housing Department will have funding to support these positions. It's just for the first 5 or 6 months that they kind of need temporary funding, and we will work with them to find the appropriate funding for the first 5 or 6 months, and we will do that through the financial status report process. We know that it's a temporary situation. We will definitely work with them and support them in that effort.
Ed Gibson with the Housing Department. I do just want to comment, though, because of the way the cash flow comes in for the residual receipts, that potential, to have to find other funds, potentially general funds or something else, does exist and just needs to be noted. But the expectation is the cash flows should catch up after the first 6 or 7 months.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Ms. Reyes? Okay. We'll go to public comment now. Thank you very much. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 8? I do not have any public comment cards on item number 8 before me. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 8? See no public comment cards before me and no one come forward on item number 8 for public comment. Public comment on item number 8 is now closed. With that, we'll adopt the CAO's recommendations. Okay. Thank you. That's the action of this committee. That's the last item we're hearing today on this committee. Being that this is the last time that I'll be chairing this committee, I do not see any emergency hearings of this committee over the next few weeks. So that being the case, I want to take a moment to thank my colleagues for all of your wonderful work as we stand together, agreeing and disagreeing, but trying our best to move this city forward. In addition to that, I would also like to thank all of the staff from all the departments as well. Thank you all for all your wonderful work. And then also, I'd like to thank Richard Williams from the city clerk's office for all your good work and making sure that we tidy up and do things proper before they move forward from this committee. In addition to that, I'd also like to thank Michael Keck and Ivania Sobolvaro, if I said it correctly, from the CLA's office and the CAO's office for all of your wonderful work. I really do mean it when I say that we have tremendous professionals in this city, and you make our work look very easy, although it is very complicated. A lot more goes on behind the scenes than just what happens in these committees, and you're very much appreciated. And then Mary Dennis, City Attorney? Yes, I'm sorry. Mary Dennis, City Attorney's Office, thank you very much for hanging in there. I don't need to mention what we've done to your department, but thank you very much for all your wonderful work. And then also, again, I would also like to take an opportunity to thank the public for coming forward, speaking your mind, reminding us of what we should be doing, reminding us of what we have been doing that perhaps doesn't sit well out there when we try to apply it. And this is a process where public comment is truly appreciated and it is respected. Where I'm going, I'll find out what public comment's like over there. I hear it's a bit different, but I have appreciated the fact that this truly is a process in the city of Los Angeles that we do respect the public. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, may I say, one is that sitting this committee for many years, seen different chairpersons, I can honestly say that you have been one of the most passionate when you focus on those who need a voice. And it's been very clear that that passion has driven us to some really contentious scenarios, but we always seem to resolve them. And I think you're right. We all come from the same school and trying to do what's best for the city. It's a city of close to 4 million. And so getting consensus is not the easiest. And you've been able to handle it in a very professional way, straightforward. And it can't happen without great staff, great department heads. And I want to thank you for all that you've done for the people that, well, quite frankly, where you come from, you know. And that's something that is not seen often. And to have your voice in Washington now is going to be a significant addition to how the city and now this country can grow because of your voice. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it very, very much. With that, this committee is now adjourned.
Can I give you my card?
Sure.
This morning.